Someone once asked me, if you could turn back time, what would you change? I answered right away. I wouldn't have stopped at that rest area on Interstate 5 that night. But the older I get, the more I understand. That was just a lie I told myself to feel better. Because if I hadn't walked into that rest stop that day, I would never have met Archer. I would never have known that even a famous star could be so lonely. I would never have known that love could bloom in the filthiest, most desperate place. And I also wouldn't have known that some people enter your life with the sound of a gunshot, not a smile. My name is Hayes, 24 years old, born in Spokane, raised in Seattle, a gay man, and a graphic designer who'd been out of college for less than a year. If you looked at my life before everything happened, you'd find it boring to the point of envy. Mornings at work, afternoons back at my small apartment, weekends doing laundry, grocery shopping, calling my mom, playing with my chubby cat Pumpkin, then watching a movie before bed. No drama, no scandal. No one knew my name except friends, coworkers, and a few clients. I liked that life. It was peaceful. After a relationship fell apart in college, I never found the courage to dive into another one. Maybe because of something my ex once said, something I still remember. Hayes, you love people like they're going to disappear tomorrow. I laughed at the time. Looking back now, maybe he was right. I always loved too much, and always lost too much. But this story doesn't start with me. It starts with Archer. If you live in America, it's nearly impossible not to know that name. A young Oscar-winning actor, the face of dozens of brands. A man voted, more than once, America's sexiest man. Every time Archer appeared on a red carpet, thousands of people screamed. The moment he smiled for the cameras, social media would be flooded with that image within minutes. Everyone thought they knew Archer, but really, they only knew the version the cameras wanted them to see. I was the same, until the night the two of us ended up locked in a windowless room together. I still remember the first sound clearly. Not screaming, not gunfire, but the sound of a plastic zip tie tightening around a wrist. Crack. A very small sound, but enough to change my entire life. I opened my eyes. My head throbbed like someone had hit it with a hammer. The space around me was so dark that only a single yellow bulb flickered on the ceiling. The smell of damp mildew, the smell of rotting wood, the smell of rusted metal. I tried to move. My hands were tied behind my back. My legs were bound to the chair legs. My mouth was bone dry. Only one question remained in my head. Where am I? Then, I heard someone cough. A very faint cough. Directly across from me. I lifted my head and saw another man tied to a chair. His head hung down. Slightly messy black hair covered his face. A wrinkled white dress shirt. A streak of dried blood at the corner of his mouth. I narrowed my eyes. My heart suddenly pounded. Couldn't be. No, couldn't be. The person slowly raised his face. A pair of gray-blue eyes opened. We looked at each other for about 3 seconds. Then the whole room seemed to stop moving. It was Archer. Not on a screen. Not on a poster. Not in an interview. But Archer, flesh and blood. Pale Archer. Exhausted. Bound. And afraid. I had once imagined hundreds of ways I might meet him. Maybe asking for an autograph. Maybe sitting next to him by chance on a plane. Maybe spotting him in a coffee shop. But absolutely not in a kidnapping. Archer looked at me for a long time. His voice was hoarse. You were taken too? I swallowed hard. Yeah. Who are you? Hayes. I'm Archer. I gave a bitter laugh. I know. For the first time in many hours, the corner of Archer's mouth lifted, ever so slightly. A smile that almost didn't exist, but enough for me to notice something strange. The person in front of me looked nothing like any image from the media. Not arrogant, not glamorous, just a young man trying to stay calm while neither of us knew if we'd make it out of this room alive. Right at that moment, the steel door behind us swung open. White light spilled in. 3 men walked in. The one in front dragged over a chair, sat down in front of us, and smiled. Both awake, huh? He set a tablet down on the table. The screen was filled with articles about Archer. Contract figures, revenue numbers, paparazzi photos. He tapped the screen lightly. Archer, you're worth more than I thought. Then he turned to me. As for you, he looked at the file in his hand, frowning. Hayes, office worker, not rich, not famous, nothing special. He laughed. I'm genuinely curious. Why were you in the same car as our target? I froze. Same car. Before I could understand, Archer frowned too. What are you talking about? The man burst out laughing. You two still don't know? He stood up, walked in front of us, then spoke slowly, word by word. The person we meant to take was only Archer. He tilted his head to look at me. As for you, Hayes, you were just a mistake. That sentence sank the room into silence. But none of us knew yet. That very mistake would be the thing that changed both our fates forever. I'm a mistake? I repeated the words like an idiot. The man in front of me sneered, twisting the silver ring on his finger. That's right. You shouldn't have been there. Last night, Archer swapped cars with his bodyguard to dodge the paparazzi. We followed the gray SUV. But you, he pointed at me. You stopped at exactly that rest area at exactly that time in exactly that spot. He shrugged. So we just grabbed both of you. I turned to Archer. He was looking at me too, his eyes full of confusion. Clearly, he'd never met me before either. The man stood up. Don't try to run. Don't think about playing hero. And most importantly, he leaned down close to Archer's face. Don't let your family think about calling the police. With that, he signaled the other two to leave. The steel door slammed shut. The sound of the lock echoed like a hammer against my chest. The room sank into silence again. I took a deep breath. Are you okay? Archer laughed weakly. Do I look okay? I didn't know how to answer. In my head, Archer had always been the man who appeared on screen in a sharp suit, with a confident smile and blinding camera flashes. But the person in front of me now, pale face, messy hair, a torn corner of his mouth, wrists bruised red from the restraints. He no longer looked like a star. He just looked like a young man my age trying to hide his fear. I'm sorry, Archer suddenly said. I looked up. Sorry for what? For getting you dragged into this. I don't know you. You should be at home right now. Not here. I laughed softly. You think this is your fault? At the very least. If it weren't for me, maybe things would have been easier for them. No. I shook my head. The fault belongs to the kidnappers. Archer looked at me. For the first time in that dark room, his eyes softened. Your name is Hayes, right? Yeah. I'm Archer. I know. He laughed. A very small laugh. Right? You know. We fell silent for a while longer. To pass the time, I asked, where did you go to college? Archer looked surprised. You're asking this right now? I figured if we just sit here quietly, I'll go insane. He thought for a few seconds, then answered. USC. Film. University of Washington. Graphic design. Graduated last year. Working already? I design ads. He nodded. Sounds interesting too. I laughed. Not as interesting as acting in movies. Archer looked down at the floor. I used to think that. Used to? Yeah. He sighed. Until I got famous. I was a little surprised. Most people dream of being famous. That's because they only see the pretty side. He leaned his head against the wall. No one sees me sleeping 3 hours a night. No one sees me having to smile right after finding out my best friend died. No one sees that every time I step outside, someone's taking a photo. No one sees. He paused. That it's been 3 years since I've been able to date someone normally. I looked at him. What do you mean? I'm gay. The room went quiet. Archer continued. My family knows. My friends know. But the public doesn't. I always have to play the role of the perfect single man. I liked a guy once. We only dared to meet at 2 in the morning. Wearing hats. wearing masks, going through back doors. In the end, he said he didn't want to live like that anymore. I couldn't keep him. I didn't say anything. I just looked at Archer. This was the first time I realized behind those enormous posters was a real person. A young man who also knew how to love, who also knew how to miss someone, who also knew the heartbreak of losing someone he loved. I'm gay too, I said quietly. Archer looked at me. Really? Yeah. I had a boyfriend. We met in college. Broke up after graduation. Archer gave a very soft smile. Well, at least there are two of us here who understand how the other feels. I don't know why, but with just that one sentence, the distance between a Hollywood star and an ordinary office designer seemed to vanish. We were just two young men, both of whom had once loved another man, both of whom had been left behind, both of whom were now tied up in the same room. Right at that moment, I heard a very small sound. Crack! From behind Archer's chair. I narrowed my eyes. Your wrist. What? Don't move. He froze. I looked closer. The tip of a nail poked out from the wood panel behind the chair. Every time Archer moved, the plastic tie rubbed against the sharp point. I swallowed hard. Maybe that was our only chance. I looked at Archer, trying to keep my voice steady. Don't let them find out. But I think we can cut the ties ourselves. Archer didn't answer right away. He just looked at me for a few seconds, as if weighing whether to let himself hope. Then he asked softly, Are you sure? I'm not sure. I was honest. But at least it's better than sitting here waiting. The corner of Archer's mouth lifted. I like that answer. The nail was at the edge of the back of the chair. Not big, not sharp enough to cut through the plastic tie in one go. But if he kept rubbing it continuously, it might wear through eventually. The problem was, Archer had to move very slowly. If he made too much noise, the kidnappers would notice. Take it slow, I said quietly. Don't use too much force. Archer gave a small nod. He began shifting his wrist bit by bit. Creak! The wooden chair made a very faint sound. We both held our breath instantly. No one came in. Only then did I dare exhale. Keep going, Archer continued. Each time his wrist dragged across the nail, I saw the plastic tie fray a little more. Very slowly. Slowly enough to drive a person mad. But it was actually wearing down. 10 minutes. 20 minutes. 30 minutes. Sweat beaded on Archer's forehead. Both his wrists were bleeding. Let's take a break, I whispered. He shook his head. If I stop now, I won't have the resolve to start again. I understood that feeling. When a person sees even the faintest glimmer of hope, they cling to it with everything they have. Right at that moment, footsteps sounded in the hallway outside. I flinched. Stop! Archer immediately leaned back into position. We both dropped our heads. The door swung open. A guard carried in 2 bottles of water and a few sandwiches. He set them on the floor. Eat. Don't die on me. We still need you too. I looked at him. Why am I here at all? He sneered. Not my call. Boss said keep him. So we keep him. That's it. I'm worthless. True. He shrugged. But sometimes a pawn is more useful than the king. He turned to Archer. As for you, if your family's smart, they won't try anything cute. Archer didn't respond. The man cursed under his breath and left. The sound of the lock echoed again. I waited a few minutes before speaking. Did you hear him? Yeah. A pawn. Archer frowned. They're keeping you for some reason. I think so too. But what reason? An ordinary designer. No money. No fame. No connection to Archer. I was completely meaningless. So why? After drinking a bit of water, Archer went back to rubbing the tie against the nail. 15 more minutes. I suddenly saw a small strand of plastic fray loose. My heart pounded. There. I see it. Archer didn't stop. He gritted his teeth. Both arms shook with pain. A little more. I whispered. Just a little more. Then, snap. A very small sound. But to us, It was no less than fireworks. The tie around Archer's wrist broke. He held his position perfectly still, not moving. We looked at each other. Neither of us could quite believe it. We'd actually done it. Archer took a deep breath. Next. Slowly. If they're watching a camera. He stopped short. Is there a camera? I lifted my head to look around. The light bulb. The corners of the walls. The ceiling. Nothing visible. I don't think so. If there were, they'd have stopped us already. Archer nodded. He slowly brought his hands forward. His wrists were covered in raw red cuts. Does it hurt? I asked. He laughed. It hurts. But I still have hands. Then he bent down to untie his legs. After that, he immediately moved toward me. This was the first time I'd ever stood this close to Archer. In person, he was taller than I'd imagined. About 6'1", broad shoulders, but thinner than he appeared on screen. Maybe from the filming schedule and the pressure. He knelt behind me. I'll untie you. Okay. Archer's hands trembled slightly. I couldn't tell if it was from exhaustion or nerves. I'm sorry, he said. Why are you apologizing? I'm hurting you. His fingertips accidentally brushed against my wrist. Very lightly, but enough for me to feel the warmth. I'm fine, I answered. A minute later, my hands were free. Blood rushed back instantly, making my fingertips prickle with numbness. I tried flexing them, painful enough to make me wince. Archer laughed. That feeling's familiar. You've been tied up a lot? No, but I filmed 3 movies with scenes where I was tied up. I couldn't help but laugh. At least the acting experience came in handy. He shrugged. Who would have guessed? That was the first time since the kidnapping. We laughed together. A very small laugh, but a real one. After untying our legs, we both stood up. My legs were numb and stiff. I nearly fell. Archer immediately reached out to steady my arm. Wait, don't walk yet. Blood hasn't circulated back. I know. I just don't want to sit here anymore. He looked at me for a few seconds, then laughed. Me neither. We began surveying the room. Roughly 200 square feet. 1 steel door. 1 small window near the ceiling, nearly 13 feet up. No furniture besides 2 chairs and a wooden table. This is bad, I muttered. Archer touched the steel door. Locked from outside. Couldn't be opened. He looked up at the window. If we stacked the chairs on the table, I still wouldn't reach it. I sighed. At least we should try. Just as we were both pulling the table over, an unexpected sound rang out. A phone. Not mine. Not Archer's. But from the guard's jacket. The jacket he'd forgotten, hung on the hook by the door when he brought in the food. Archer and I both froze. The phone kept buzzing. The screen lit up, displaying exactly 2 words. Boss calling. Archer turned to look at me. A bold idea flashed in his eyes. I have a plan. I swallowed hard. What plan? Archer smiled. A smile entirely different from the exhausted one before. Calm, sharp, and reckless. I'm going to answer the call. Absolutely not, I said almost instantly. Archer kept staring at the phone as it kept buzzing. Why not? Because if he recognizes your voice, I won't use my own voice, he replied calmly. I blinked. What do you mean? Archer smirked. Hayes, I'm an actor. I make a living by becoming other people. I fell silent. Right? That was literally his job. The phone kept buzzing. The screen flashed boss calling for the 3rd time. If no one answered, they'd definitely get suspicious. Archer looked at me. If anything seems off, pretend you're still tied up. I gave a slight nod. He took a deep breath, hit the answer button, and instantly shifted his voice. Hoarser, heavier, exactly like the guard who'd just brought in the food. Yeah, I widened my eyes. If I hadn't witnessed it myself, I never would have believed that was Archer's voice. A low male voice came through from the other end. Everything good? Good. Archer answered without hesitation. How are the 2 of them? Still tied up. Any trouble? No. A long pause followed. Then the voice on the other end said, "Don't forget. Move them to warehouse B tonight at 9 sharp." My heart skipped a beat. Moved? If we were taken somewhere else, our chance of escape would grow even slimmer. The voice on the phone continued, "The buyer's coming at midnight." The buyer? I turned to Archer. He froze for a split second too. Just a split second. But enough for the voice on the other end to ask, "You still there?" Archer answered immediately, "Yeah. Good. Don't let anything go wrong." The call ended. The room fell silent. I looked at Archer. "A buyer?" He nodded very slowly. "I don't think. They're just after ransom money." I felt a chill run down my spine. If it wasn't ransom, then what was it? We hadn't had time to think further when the sound of car engines drifted in from outside. One car, then a second. Archer immediately pulled me to hide behind the door. Through a small gap, we heard people talking. More people arrived. I whispered, "At least 4. Archer gave a slight nod. The footsteps grew closer, then faded. It seemed they were heading toward the building next door. Archer glanced at the clock on the wall. 8:13. Less than an hour left. "We have to get out of here." I looked around. The steel door was still locked. The window too high. No tools. I started to feel desperate. Right at that moment, Archer suddenly bent down and picked up the aluminum tray that had held the sandwiches. He bent a corner of it hard. The metal edge became sharp like a small blade. "I once learned a trick in training for an action film," he said. "It can pick a few simple types of locks. I don't know if it'll actually work, but it's worth trying." He knelt in front of the lock. I stood in front to block the view, so if anyone glanced through the small window in the door, they'd have a harder time noticing. Every second dragged by like an eternity. The faint sound of metal scraping against metal. Sweat ran down Archer's temple. 3 minutes. 5 minutes. 8 minutes. Suddenly, click! The lock popped open. I could hardly believe my eyes. "You did it." Archer stood stunned for a few seconds too. "I actually did it." We looked at each other. Neither of us said anything more. He slowly pushed the door open. A dark hallway appeared. No one there. "Go," I whispered. We both stepped out. The smell of machine oil and sawdust hit our noses. This was clearly an abandoned warehouse complex. Along both sides of the hallway were several locked rooms. At the end of the corridor, light spilled in. Along with the sound of people laughing and talking, we moved very quietly. At the corner of the hallway, I peeked out. There were 5 people. 2 pickup trucks. 1 large warehouse building. Further out, a pine forest. If we ran straight for it, the chance of being spotted was nearly certain. I pulled back. Not good. Archer thought for a few seconds. Then his eyes landed on the electrical panel mounted on the wall. An idea sparked. If the power goes out, they'll be thrown into chaos. I understood immediately. "You stall them. I'll cut the breaker." Archer looked at me. "Okay." I quietly crept along the wall toward the electrical panel. My heart pounded violently. My hand shook as it touched the lever. 3, 2, 1. I pulled it down hard. Pop! The entire building plunged into darkness. Curses erupted from every direction. What the hell? Where's the power? Check it now. Archer immediately grabbed my wrist. Run! We bolted out of the hallway, racing across the yard behind the building. Cold wind slapped against my face. The sound of shoes pounding on gravel echoed sharply. Behind us, someone shouted, "They're escaping!" An ear-splitting alarm siren tore through the night. Then, a gunshot rang out in the middle of the woods. Bang! The bullet lodged into a tree trunk right beside me, splinters of wood flying. Archer yanked my arm hard. "Get down!" We tumbled down a slope covered in dry leaves. Above us, flashlight beams swept wildly. Dogs began barking in the darkness. I tried to hold my breath. Archer leaned close to my ear, speaking so softly it was barely more than breath. "Don't make a sound. There are hunting dogs." I held my breath. The barking was getting closer with every passing second. The barking grew closer and closer. Not just one dog. At least two. Each hoarse growl echoing through the pine forest sent a chill down my spine. I pressed myself flat against the rotting leaves, barely daring to blink. Archer was right beside me. His hand still gripped my wrist. Not tightly, just enough to remind me that I didn't have to face this alone. From up on the slope, flashlight beams swept back and forth. A man's voice shouted, "Spread out. They can't have gotten far." Footsteps scattered in different directions. Branches snapping, radios crackling. Then, a dog barked directly above our heads. My heart nearly stopped. Archer turned his head very slowly, leaning close to my ear. "If it comes down here, don't run." I looked at him, confused. "Let me handle it," he said very quietly, his eyes strangely calm. In that moment, I realized Archer wasn't just an actor. He had the ability to stay calm in situations where most people would panic. Maybe years of living under media pressure had trained him for this. Or maybe he was just forcing himself to appear stronger than he actually felt. The dog sniffed around a few times. I could clearly hear its nose sniffing, getting closer by the moment. 30 feet, 25 feet, 15 feet. I could feel its breath. Just as I thought it was all over, a car horn sounded from the direction of the warehouse. "Honk! Honk! Honk!" Someone called out loudly. "The car's here. Boss is back." The dog immediately changed direction. The handler whistled. "Nero, come here." The sound of the dog's paws faded into the distance. Archer and I stayed frozen. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. Neither of us dared move. Only when the forest was completely quiet again did Archer finally release my wrist. "Looks like they're gone." I let out a breath, the longest breath of my entire life. We kept moving along the slope. The dense pine forest made it incredibly difficult to move. Branches whipped across my face. My shoes kept slipping on the wet leaves. About 15 minutes later, my foot caught on a root. I fell hard. "Careful." Archer immediately helped me up. "I'm fine." I tried to stand, then winced. My ankle throbbed with pain. Archer crouched down to look. "You've twisted it." "It's nothing. I can walk." I tried to take another step. The pain was bad enough that I had to bite down hard on my lip. Archer sighed. "Don't push it. If you keep going, you won't be able to walk at all." I laughed weakly. "So what's your plan then?" He didn't answer. He just turned his back to me and bent down slightly. "Get on." My eyes went wide. "What?" "I'll carry you." I laughed. "You're a movie star." "So? If your fans saw this." Archer glanced back. For the first time since we'd escaped the warehouse, I saw him really smile. "Hayes, right now we're running from a kidnapping ring. I don't think image is exactly a priority anymore." I laughed too. Finally, I wrapped my arms around his shoulders. Archer carried me on his back. I wasn't heavy, but it was still enough to make his breathing grow gradually heavier. "Sorry," I said quietly. "For what?" "For wearing you out." He laughed. "You apologize a lot." "What about you?" "I apologize a lot too." We both burst out laughing. A soft laugh in the middle of the dark forest. Strangely enough, it eased a lot of the fear inside me. About half an hour later, Archer stopped. Ahead of us was a small stream. He gently set me down. "I need to rest a bit." I looked at him. His shirt was soaked through with sweat. Both his hands still bore the marks from the ties. I suddenly realized, since we'd started running, Archer hadn't complained of pain even once. "Your hands." He looked down. "It's fine. Can I take a look?" He hesitated for a moment, then nodded. I took his hand. The wounds had started bleeding again from the climbing and from carrying me. I tore a strip of fabric from my t-shirt. "Hayes, don't move." I carefully wrapped it around his wrist. Very gently, just like I once bandaged Owen's hand after a rock climbing trip. The thought made my heart sink. Archer watched me. "You've done this before?" "I have. For my ex-boyfriend." He was quiet. A moment later he asked, Do you still love him? I looked down at the water flowing past our feet. Took a few seconds before I answered. I think. I only still love the memory of him. Archer gave a small nod. I understand. I felt that too. His eyes drifted toward the distant trees. There are people who aren't by your side anymore, but who still live on in your habits. I looked up at him. Have you not gotten over your ex? He smiled faintly. No, I'm over him. He paused a moment. It's just. Sometimes I still miss the feeling of being loved. That sentence made my heart tremble slightly, not out of pity, but because I was the same as him. Neither of us still loved our exes, but we both remembered the feeling of once having a guy hold our hand. A guy who waited for us after class. A guy who hugged us from behind in a small kitchen. Sometimes, people don't miss a person. They miss the feeling of once belonging to someone. The night wind blew through the forest. Archer stood up first. Let's go. I nodded. But right at that moment, from across the stream, a headlight suddenly swept across the tree trunks, followed by the sound of an off-road vehicle's engine. A voice rang out through a loudspeaker. Hayes, Archer, we know you're out here. You'd better not make us come find you. Archer and I looked at each other. Both of us understood in that look that the chase was far from over.